week 8 of the fantasy football season, and here's the top 12 defense rankings I'm doing this week. The first defense is the Los Angeles Rams. So the Rams have a great matchup once again this week at the Houston Texans, who give up the second most fantasy points to defenses. So right here, I know the Texans are probably getting Tyrod Taylor back this week. That should help them a little, in my opinion, because David Mills, he's been pretty bad in those 6 games he started there for the Houston Texans. But right here, this team's going to dominate once again. I know last week Detroit tried pulling out all the stops on this Ram defense, where the Rams didn't do much in that game. 19 points allowed, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a 4th down stop. But this week with Tyrod Taylor behind the weak offensive line and pretty much a non-existent running game, I could see the Rams having one of the best fantasy days of the season for a defense. And I got them number 1 this week. Number 2, the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills coming off a bye week now, and after a tough loss on Monday Night Football in Week 6, I think this week here versus the Miami Dolphins, they're going to have another monster game. Not as good as they did in Week 2 at Miami, but pretty similar. In that Week 2 ball game in Miami, 6 sacks, an interception, 2 fumble recoveries, and 4 4th down stops if you play that in your league. So right here, the Miami Dolphins give up the 5th most fantasy points to defenses. I think the Bills here, they're going to play angry in this one. They're at home, back in Buffalo, and they're going to get to Tua Tagovailoa early and often, because this Miami offensive line isn't that great, and their running game has been a problem as well this season. So Buffalo in this one gets back on track, in my opinion, and could finish number 2 easily this week at the defensive position. Number 3, the Cincinnati Bengals. So this Bengal team, they're definitely for real now, but it also wouldn't be a shocking thing to me if they lost in a trap game at the New York Jets, but the Jets give up the most fantasy points to defenses this season. And the Bengals the last couple weeks here have played real well. Week 6 at Detroit, 11 points allowed, an interception, and a 4th down stop. And last week at a tough Baltimore Raven offense, only 17 points allowed, 5 sacks, and 3 4th down stops. So right here, we know Zach Wilson's hurt for this Jet team. He's out 2 to 4 weeks with a knee injury, and it's either going to be Joe Flacco or White in this game as the starting quarterback for this Jet team. But I think it's going to be Joe Flacco. He's similar with this team. He was on the Jets last season until they reacquired him earlier this week in a deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think this Bengal defense, they're going to make a few plays in this one, get a couple sacks, couple turnovers, and possibly a pick 6 as well. Number 4, the San Francisco 49ers. So the 49ers, they travel to Chicago this week. And this Bear offensive line is one of the worst offensive lines in all of pro football. And Justin Fields, he's been struggling this season, and he's shown nothing in his rookie year here, holding on to the ball way too long, turning the ball over a bunch of times, and getting sacked tons of times as well. So San Francisco, I think this week, bounces back after losing 4 ball games in a row. And the Chicago team gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to defenses. So I think Nick Bosa and this defense, they're going to make a couple plays in this game. And it's a must-win game for them as well. So it's going to start with defense, in my opinion. And the 49ers, they can make plays on Justin Fields because he's just shown nothing this season. And I think the 49ers have a good week. Number 5, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers have a pretty good matchup, I think, at the New Orleans Saints here this week. Jameis Winston, he didn't look too great in that last ball game at the Seattle Seahawks. And this Buc defense, when they really get at the quarterback and get motivated, they really put up big ball games. And last week versus the Chicago Bears, 3 points allowed, 4 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, and a 4th down stop in that ball game. So right here, I know New Orleans only gives up the 5th least amount of fantasy points to defenses this season, but I think they could get to famous Jameis Winston this week. It's an indoor game, and to be honest, I don't think besides Alvin Kamara, there's many good weapons on this New Orleans Saints team. So I think Tampa's going to try to take him out of this game and make the receivers like Marcus Callaway, Traquan Smith, and Trotman try to beat them down the field. But I think Tampa Bay has a big week this week in number 5. Number 6, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers, they're starting to get things going now over the last few weeks. And I like the matchup a lot for them at the Cleveland Browns in this ball game. The Browns are still banged up. Case Keenum is going to be on the center once again in this game. And I know Keenum looked decent last week, but that Denver Bronco team just couldn't get anything going defensively or offensively. So right here, I think Pittsburgh, they want to win this ball game. They want to get on the season to 4-3 and have a chance still in that division with Baltimore 5-2. And this week, I think they're going to make plays on Case Keenum. Nick Chubb possibly could come back in this one. But anyway, Chubb plays or not, I think it's about getting on Keenum and forcing turnovers. And I think the Steelers team this week has a good week. And I like them at number 6. Number 7 this week at the defensive position is the Denver Broncos. So the Broncos last week, they got shredded on the ground by Dearness Johnson for 146 yards and a touchdown. But this week, I think they have a better game versus the Washington football team. They're back in Denver, 10 days off now, which is good rest for them. And Von Miller, hopefully he could play in this ball game after getting shooken up last week at Cleveland. So this Bronco team, I know the production has dropped off big time since week 3 after they've had tougher matchups. But this week versus Washington, Antonio Gibson ain't 100%. Logan Thomas, he's still out and not playing. Terry McLaurin, he's banged up. We'll see his status for this week's ball game. And I think Denver could tee off on Taylor Heineke, even though he's looked pretty decent, in my opinion, this season. And I think this week they could finish as a top 7 defense. Number 8, the Los Angeles Chargers. So the Chargers, I know 2 games this season, they got totally torched on the defensive side of things. But this week they're back home. They versus a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones. And I think this defense is going to make plays here. Like we saw them have good weeks in week 3 and week 4. Now it's back to the basics coming off the bye week. And this Patriot offensive line isn't that good as well, in my opinion. So I could see Joey Bosa feasting in this ball game here for the Los Angeles Chargers with a few sacks and a couple turnovers on the rookie Mac Jones. And this running game hasn't been that great as well here in New England, besides Damian Harris with a couple decent games this year. So I like the Chargers at number 8. Number 9, the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks, they've been playing a little better over the last couple weeks in terms of not giving up as many points on the board. Week 6 at Pittsburgh, 23 points allowed, sack and a fumble recovery. Week 7 on Monday Night Football versus the New Orleans Saints, 13 points allowed, 2 sacks, and a fumble recovery. But this week they got a great matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars that give up the 4th most fantasy points to defenses. So I think in this one, Seattle could get to Trevor Lawrence a few times in this one. And I don't think the weapons on the outside are all that good as well here for Trevor Lawrence and this team. They got Laviska Shenault. He's been okay this season. I know they got Marvin Jones, who's been pretty decent. But besides those 2 guys, not many weapons on the outside. And I think this Seattle defense could clamp on the receivers and focus in on the run game and make some plays in this one. Number 10, the Cleveland Browns. So the Browns, we know they're banged up, but in this game, I think they can make a couple plays still. A low-scoring AFC North type of battle between the Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers in this one. And if they want to win this ball game, it's going to start with defense, in my opinion, for this Brown team, because this Pittsburgh offense is pretty high-flying and pretty solid with Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool. But their defense and front 4 is pretty scary still, in my opinion. And I definitely could get to Big Ben. He's not as mobile as he used to be. And nowadays, if you get a hand on him, he's going to go down because this offensive line isn't as strong as it used to be as well. So I think the Browns could be a decent defense this week. And I got them in number 10. Number 11, the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles, they're 1 week top 12 ranked defense, in my opinion. They got a good matchup at the Detroit Lions that give up the 6th most fantasy points to defenses. And the Eagles this season, they've only reached double-digit fantasy points twice in the first 7 weeks of the season. But this week at Detroit don't have many weapons on the outside. I know they got a good running back in DeAndre Swift, but Jared Goff, he just hasn't been good this season in Detroit. And I think this Eagle team can make a few plays and have a decent fantasy day. So I got them at number 11. And the 12th and final defense I'm ranking this week is the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons last week had a decent fantasy production day, even though Tua had a good game in the air and stuff. But the Falcons defense, I think, can make a few plays in this one versus Sam Darnold and this Carolina Panther offense. Because this Panther offense the last couple weeks here just haven't done anything. Sam Darnold, he's been pulled out of games early. And this week, I think the Falcons, they could get to him a few times with a few sacks and create a few turnovers. This Falcon defense, I know, is one of the worst defenses in the league in terms of yards and points given up. But this week, I just can't trust Sam Darnold and this Panther offense. And I think the Falcons in this one can make a few plays like they did last week. And it wouldn't surprise me to see them get 6 or 7 fantasy points this week. So that's the top 12 defenses I'm ranking for week 8 of the fantasy football season.